tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. We talk with musicians about songwriting and the creative process. My name is Mike, and I sat down recently with Cody Diekhoff, the person behind the musical moniker Chicago Farmer. Chicago Farmer has been making music as a solo act and as a band for over 20 years now. They just released their 5th full-length album, Homeaid. I really have enjoyed this record. It's a great collection of songs. Cody breaks a number of them down for us here. I will keep this intro brief because that's what the kids seem to want these days. But let me say that I really enjoyed this conversation. Cody is funny, thoughtful, full of insights and entertaining stories. He writes compelling, working-class folk songs that come from a place of truth, and he and his band deliver them in a powerful and engaging fashion. Chicago Farmer is out there on the road now. Keep an eye out for them. They are a blast to experience live. And for our Chicago friends, their 2-night run at Martyrs on April 3rd and 4th will be excellent. I plan on being there. And for the record, I do enjoy the occasional Guinness if you are headed in direction of the bar. Quick shout out to Angie Carlson at Propeller Publicity for coming through once again, making this interview happen. Much appreciated. And now please enjoy this Tell You What conversation with Chicago Farmer, Cody Diekhoff.
Checking. Hey, 1, 2. Monday.
Yeah.
All right.
Cody Diekhoff, welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. Thank you for coming up here to the Tell You What Epiplex. Your new record, Homeaid, coming out very soon, right?
Correct. Yeah, March 6th.
March 6th. When we air this, I think it will be after March 6th, so it will be out. I've been able to spend some time with this record. I've really enjoyed it. Congrats on putting together this great collection of songs. From what I gather in my readings, you tend to play your songs out on the road a fair amount before recording them. Is that was the case with these songs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. From when I actually wrote them, to me performing them, to me showing them to the band playing them on the road, and then finally recording them with the band. It's been probably like a 3-year process.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been quite the exploration. And typically I just play with solo, but for the last 6 years or so, I put together a band called the Field Notes.
Right. And
it's really changed up my process. And instead of just it being all me, I'm bringing these songs to the band space, and everybody's kind of chipping in on the sounds. And that's what I've kind of wanted after being a folk singer for so long. I wanted to still have the songs and the stories be the focus, but kind of present them to an audience on stage and on the record in the most interesting way as possible, I think.
Yeah. Did those songs kind of take shape by playing them out live and changed over that time you were playing them live before you brought them into the studio?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they've changed. Just kind of like, that's when the magic happens, I think, is in the rehearsal. I guess I'm kind of the leader of the band because I write all the songs, but it's kind of a democracy when it comes into the studio, and people come up with different parts. Yeah, we do this like a pause, or we do like a break live. Sometimes it happens on accident, and we're kind of like, yeah, I'm glad that happened because that was supposed to be what it should be.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, they do definitely evolve. The only problem with that is when you release the record, most of your hardcore fans have heard the songs many, many times. But we have a couple on there that we don't really play live much, so I think it benefits everyone, and they still get some new ear candy when it actually comes out.
All right, we're going to get back to your process and some of these songs in depth in a bit, but I would like to have you take us through your personal musical background. I think to understand your process and your songs, it's important to hear your backstory. Your upbringing in your home are a big part of your songs, particularly on this record. So, small farming town, rural Illinois, right?
Yeah, Delavan, Illinois, population 1,700.
1,700.
Yeah.
So that area was and is, again, home for you.
I grew up in that little town, and then I lived in a town called Bloomington, Illinois.
Yep.
And then Chicago, and now I'm back in Bloomington. So I kind of run the gamut of small to medium to huge.
Okay.
And back to medium.
Yeah. Talk about how that growing up in that small farming community maybe is present in what you're doing now, whether it was the family or the community or the environment.
My parents didn't play music, but they were huge music fans.
Yeah.
You know, playing the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and my dad's favorite band was always 10 Years After. And his first job actually was my dad owned a head shop in Pekin, Illinois.
Is that right?
It was called the Freak Boutique.
Nice.
And specialized in paraphernalia and water beds and all kinds of crazy things.
Lava lamps.
Yeah, the late 70s commodities and whatnot. But then, you know, he had a kid on the way and another one too. And so he kind of had to bear down. So he started a cowboy boot store.
Okay.
And when that went under, he started selling yellow pages and hitting the road. But he always was a free spirit. He always wanted to live like kind of a free-spirited life like me. And even when he would have to put on a suit and tie and be a salesman, he still kind of did everything in his own way.
Yeah.
My mom was a public school teacher for over 30 years and is retired. And then really it was my grandparents. My grandpa played piano. My grandpa played guitar. And he sang in the choir in church. And he told stories. And he was really my go-to guy. He was my number one character.
Okay.
I was in study hall one day in high school and was kind of daydreaming, going on these little adventures in my head. And when I got back, I started writing them down. It was kind of started as stories, but then they started to rhyme. It kind of turned into limericks. And I was like, I'm enjoying this. Wow, I have a little bit of creativity in me. I had no idea. You know, I just played sports up to that point.
Yep.
Rolled around and got dirty. But I took some money from baling hay that summer, and I bought a guitar. And the next thing I know, I was kind of turning that little poetry and those limericks into songs, and been doing it ever since. Really.
So from the outset, when you got the guitar, it was original music. The first music you played, more or less, was stuff you were writing.
Yeah, I just taught myself, and then I was kind of like, how can these poems be turned into songs? And I had no idea.
Right.
But just started writing about things that were around me, things that were in my house, and I started writing about my neighbors. Everybody kind of became my characters, whether they liked it or not, you know? Yeah, I started a little band in high school. Didn't know what we were doing, but it's kind of a special time, I think, when you're just learning how to play guitar. You know, a family friend showed me 3 chords, and I just started strumming away, and then I still piece it together, but there was something very interesting and intriguing at that beginning of like writing a song or putting chords together, putting words together. I don't know. I can't explain it.
You mean the first time you did it, or each time you do it when you start a song?
Back then,
yes.
When I first, I wasn't even calling myself a musician or a songwriter.
Uh-huh.
I was just trying to put these puzzle pieces together. And it was great because at the time I had no idea what I was going to do in life, or didn't have any vision or goals or anything like that. So yeah, I kind of came along and saved by the songs and the guitar.
How long do you think you were at a high school band and thereafter till you realized people did this for a living, that this could be a vocation for you?
I still never thought of it right away, but we had entered, our town has a little carnival every year, and we entered in the talent show.
Yep.
And I wrote a song about my neighbor. He was kind of an alcoholic, and he would, every couple of days, his wife would kick him out of the house, and he would just go wander around town. And then he would come back, and she'd let him back in. So the song was called She Kicked Me Out, But She Let Me Back In. And that was the whole song. That was all the lyrics. So we played that at the talent show, and we got beat. First place was a girl who sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and second place were these 2 farmers who shot mini marshmallows out of their noses across the stage. And
How could you possibly think
we
that?
took third place to that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't going to be easy, writing songs about what's going on next door. But
the marshmallow shooters are always out there.
Yeah, they ended up being on Stupid Human Tricks with David
nice.
Letterman. So they beat me to fame and everything.
That's great. Was there eating of the marshmallows?
Yeah. One guy was on one side, kneeled down, shot it across the room into the other guy's mouth.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what you do in the wintertime.
That's pretty good.
When you're in a small town, you come up with things to do after you've had too much to drink.
All right. So there are a couple of themes I want to pursue as we go through your history and your process. And one of them is this concept of home, of place, and the journeys you've had. You've already talked about the journey you made from various towns in Illinois up to Chicago, but you've also been on the road a lot over the last, whatever it is, 20 years or so, right?
Yeah.
Would you say the road was as much of a home for you at times as your actual home? Were you out there that much, and did it feel that way?
Yeah, I think we started calling the venues we play our homes away from home for sure, and they really are, especially now when it's this cold. Just, pulling into a venue that has the heat on and nothing fancy, just a warm cup of coffee or tea, and you're like, we made it.
Yeah.
We almost wrecked the van 3 times on the way here, but it got us here, and here we are, and we made it to our little safe home away from home. So that's kind of what the venues have become to me over the years. Really,
return to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you get to one for the first time, it feels like a home. But
well, I'd like you to tell you what studio
this
is.
This is so homey. Yeah, I'm ready to move right in.
All right. Well, let's not go too far.
I miss Chicago and Chicagoland a little bit, and this feels like the perfect spot.
You able to write songs on the road?
Actually, when I first started playing music, obviously there was no ways or means to make a living at it. Yep. So I've kept working. And when I was young, I worked on the farm, my grandparents' farm. But my first few jobs were really delivered pizzas, delivered wholesale flowers. And I remember when I was delivering wholesale flowers on my route, I wrote songs all the time. Just in my head, yeah. And it was so great, and I felt kind of like my dad being out there on the road, and and being, not having a boss breathing down my neck, and I felt like that free spirit. And obviously, I couldn't write while I was driving, but I would repeat the lines over and over in my head, and then when I finally got a chance to write it down, and so that continues. And years later, I was writing songs, driving to gigs, you know. I heard Prine used to do that from Maywood to Chicago, and which is amazing, which my songs that I wrote while driving didn't compare to his at all, of course. But but I used to do that. And now, to this day, like I'll sit at home and kind of have a little bit of a dry spell when it comes to writing, and we'll just get in the van and start and head in a different direction, and all of a sudden some ideas start to pour out again. So kind of go back to that, being behind the wheel from that one van to another.
I'm wondering if it is more being in a place where you're taking in a different landscape, or a lot of people say it is kind of the act of driving kind of allows your mind to kind of go to the place where ideas can form.
I think so, yeah, and new places definitely. My wife and I have probably moved about 10 or 11 times in the last 15 years, 15 to 20 years. And whenever I move into a new home, it's like boom, boom, boom. There's like 4 songs.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, where did that come from? I don't know. I think it's just new environment, new space.
That's interesting.
It really is. Huh. And whenever I was in Chicago, I was often writing about my small town. And whenever I'm back in Bloomington, I'm always reminiscing about Chicago too. So that's a funny way that works.
That's the next. I was going to get to that next. You lived in Chicago for a few years. Talk about your time here, maybe why you came here, but how the time you spent here, I say here in Chicago, we're in the greater Chicago area, how the time you spent here has its place in your process or your art now.
Sure. So after I played both bars and most of the garages in my hometown, I lived in Bloomington normal for a little while, and I had these friends, and they were in a band, and they were going to move to Chicago, and they had this loft. It was in Wicker Park. right in between the Double Door and a place called the Pontiac Cafe.
Yeah.
And it was a 3-bedroom loft, and 6 of them were going to move in there. And I said, I don't know if that's going to work. But I joined them later, and we ended up going
So there ended up being 7.
Yeah, there were 7 of us, and we ended up going to the Home Depot and buying a bunch of supplies, being small town, country, do-it-yourself kids.
Yeah.
And we put up like walls, and we turned that 3-bedroom loft into like a 7-bedroom loft. And the walls stayed up, and the guy who owned the loft was pretty happy because now he had a 7-bedroom loft. But there were 7 of us living there, me and this band. It was in 2003. It was scary, but it was also a really beautiful time in the early 2000s. In Wicker Park, everybody was an artist or a musician, and there was just nonstop music and poetry slams and speakeasies, and everybody had an instrument or was covered in paint.
Yeah,
or,
a lot of people playing generally speaking, the kind of music you were playing.
Yeah, and even the guys on the corner, they weren't just asking for money; they would like give you a poem.
Huh.
They'd be like, "Hey, you got $1? I got a poem for you."
That's
great. That was like 2003 Wicker Park.
Yeah.
And I would go to this place called the Filter Cafe every day, and I would write for hours. And then at night I would play those songs with the band that I live with, and splitting the rent 7 ways, I could actually live in Chicago.
Right.
And it was scary, but it was also a really kind of had an energy about it.
Yeah.
So being from a town of 1,700 and being surrounded by all that, I just kind of submersed myself in it, and it was a special time. And I think that creativity that was just bouncing around there, I still think about that when I think of the city. I mean, I had plenty of hardships as well when I lived up here, but I remember those days fondly, and that spark still kind of comes out when I think of it.
Yeah, and you already mentioned how when you were here, you wrote songs about back home, and then when you left, maybe you wrote some songs influenced by your time here.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I have a song called The $20 Bill that's on the record. Yep. When I travel around, a lot of people are like, what in the hell is a Chicago farmer? That makes no sense. And I'm like, well, listen to that song. That kind of tells you what it is.
Yeah.
And that song, I feel like when I was in Chicago, I brought, my roots, you take them with you wherever you go, I think. And so that song is it starts off, the first half is on the farm, and the second half is in Chicago. And the first day I moved in Chicago, I got that welcoming gift, which is somebody broke the window in my car and stole some tools out of my back seat. And, later I learned I shouldn't leave tools in your back seat in Chicago anyways. But, so I had some hardships, and it was tough on a small town kid for a while. And, it was definitely a struggle, but I feel like that struggle definitely came through in the songs that I wrote too,
So there's like a journey here, right?
Yeah.
Farm, town, on the road, big city, back down to the rural area.
Yeah.
Do you see this for the arc that it is, kind of your spiritual, artistic journey as maybe meant to be as part of your path that you were on?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was all meant to be. And I also feel like the name Chicago Farmer is a little silly, but it's who I am. And no matter what, it's who I become, When I was moving, somebody said I was going to be like the urban cowboy, and I said, that's already taken. So how about Chicago Farmer? And the plan was to have a band, but when I was up here, I kind of fell in love with Old Town, and I really fell...
The Old Town School.
Yeah, Old Town School of Folk, and I fell head over heels for Prine and Arlo and Steve Goodman and all those cats. And so really it's just kind of like, it stuck as the name even for a solo guy.
That became your model.
Yeah, and then really now that's who I am for sure.
Yeah.
I'm north of I-80, south of I-80. And in 2000, 11 or 12, I had the first time I opened for Todd Snider.
Yeah.
And I told him, I think it's a silly name, but he loved it.
We're going to get to Todd
Yeah.
in a little while. I don't want
Yeah.
to jump ahead because he kind of comes into play
Totally.
with our next topic.
But for the name, he loved the name. And
did.
I was like, I don't know, man. I think it's silly. And he's like, no, I love it. You got to keep it. And I was just like, we're going back and forth. And we had just met, and he's like, well, what's your last name? And I said, Diekhoff. And he immediately said, oh, you can't put that on a poster. That's how sharp he was. He was just, you can't put that on a poster. And I was like, well, if it's good enough for him, then I'm going to keep it. And thankfully, I kept the name because it's definitely become who I am.
Yeah. Well, in all your journeys, and you kind of hinted at this, that when you get to a new home, you write more songs, but home and place seems to have a really important part in your process, in your songs.
Yeah.
Homeaid is the name of this record.
Yeah.
The title song, the chorus, home is where the art is, home is where there's song. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. So beginning at home, I was the musician. My sister was the artist.
Okay.
I remember one day she was taking the door off the hinges in her bedroom. I was like, what are you doing? And she took the door off of the hinges and she painted it and she turned it into a table. And that became her table in her bedroom. So I was kind of the music guy. She was kind of the artist. And when I first started writing in that high school study hall, there were these other guys in the back of the room. And it looked like they were studying, but they didn't seem like the studying type. So I went and started seeing what they were doing, and they were drawing, and they were drawing stuff on their T-shirts, like, they were drawing stuff like Metallica and Iron Maiden and stuff. And I tried my hand at that, and I was like, I am not a visual artist. Let's just nip that in the bud right here. So my art became the music, and I still, to this day, even especially with this album, we're constantly putting out art with posters and our album art and our music. And it just seems like this blend of two things that really is a big part of what I do. And when we play festivals, it's a mix of music and art.
And your sister does some of your art?
She has done some art before. She's actually an art therapist.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's from the beginning at home, music and art have been a huge part of it. And actually, my grandfather passed away a few years ago, but my grandma is 97, and she's doing well. But she lives about a month with my mom, and then she goes and lives a month with my aunt. And so I feel like my mom and my aunt have kind of become homemaids with my grandma too. So that kind of ties in with the whole family thing and home thing and taking care of each other, but not only at home, when we go to our homes away from home, like those venues, that's kind of the vibe we like to put off is, one big family taking care of each other, leaning on each other, giving each other a little therapy and escape and whatnot, and just telling some stories like we used to back home.
Home is where the art is. Home is where there's song. It hits you the hardest when you're away from home too long. We had made up our minds before we made this stage. Tonight we're gonna try to find some notes that ain't been played. Town to town, nothing sounds as good as homemade. Home is where the art is. Home is where there's song. It hits you the hardest when you're away from home too long.
Let's dig into the album a little bit. We can get to the second theme I have here on my list, and that is storytelling. You have a number of story songs on this record. They're so well done. Talk about, in general, storytelling in your life and in your music, the craft of it, and and its place in your songwriting.
Yeah, that was definitely Grandpa. I mean, I don't know how he and his friends even too have these memories. Like, I can't remember what I did last week.
Yeah.
My grandfather could tell you what year the story was, pretty close to the date, exactly where he was. I was in the van with the band not that long ago, and we tried to remember when this certain thing happened where a joke was told and we couldn't remember. But my grandpa could pinpoint it, and he would just tell stories nonstop, and I loved it. And when I was a kid, he would take me up to the little diner coffee shop in town, and all the farmers would drink coffee and all the grandkids would drink Cokes. And I would just listen to those guys tell stories. And then as I got older, spending more times like in bars, playing gigs, there were always the storytellers at the bar. And I just always loved a good story. If it was long, short, funny, serious, it just always hit me. And so, but mostly it came from Grandpa. And then for me, like my first gig, I remember it was at my hometown bar. They offered me like $100 and a catfish dinner and all the beer I could drink to play. And I said, yes. I was like, I have made it. I have made it. And then I asked the bartender, like, how long do I play? And she said from 9 to 1.
Oh, gosh.
And so at that time, I had already eaten my catfish dinner and had a few beers, so I had to think of something. So I just started kind of like BSing, as they say.
Yep.
You call it storytelling, you call it BS, you call it banter, whatever. But I had about 9 or 10 songs under my belt, and I had to fill 4 hours. So, so I kind of started doing, partially what we're doing now, just shooting the breeze. And so I was telling stories of what me and my friends had did the weekend before. So the storytelling in the songs kind of came right away when I started playing gigs.
That's funny.
Yeah.
First cut on the record, Tina Hart's Mustang, classic story arc built into this song, right? Racing cars and country roads, small town life. From a craft songwriting perspective, I really like how the narrator here doesn't reveal their place in the story until near the end.
Okay, yeah.
It's kind of a critical, pivotal way. I think that's really well done. But talk about how this song came together.
Yeah, this was actually, it's the first song on the record, but it was the last song that I wrote for it. So whenever I need a story song, I go back to that hometown and I just start driving around, and pretty soon I have some ideas. And I started thinking about all the cars that I owned in high school, and I realized pretty quickly none of them were song-worthy. So I started thinking about other people's cars in high school, and the girls always had the cool cars in my high school. There were only 35 of us, I think, in my class, in my graduating class. But one girl, Tina Hart, had an 85 Mustang, and it was just, the coolest car.
Yeah.
And I think it had... Maybe it had T-tops, I can't remember, but it was the coolest looking car, and it was definitely the fastest car.
Yeah.
And we had these 4 benches uptown because we didn't have stoplights. So we would sit on these benches, and you would just kind of hang out there on weekends.
At like a crossroads?
Yeah, it was like the 4 corners.
Okay.
And somebody would come pick you up, and you would just drive around for a while, and then they drop you off, and pretty soon you get in a car with somebody else and drive around.
It's kind of like an Uber situation with no purpose to it.
Yeah, the rural Uber with no destination in mind.
Yeah.
And but once in a while, I was able to get in Tina Hart's Mustang and just cruise around, and it was pretty legendary. So that song just kind of happened, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's her real name. Her real name is Tina Hart, and fortunately, she likes the song. She told me.
That's great.
And Caterpillar Road is a real road, and the Tazewell County Boys it's all pretty much true in there. Yeah.
Well, it just flows so well, and it's such a great story. But your rhyming skills are in fine display. They're on fine display all over this record.
Oh, thanks.
So on this one in particular, there's internal rhymes all over the place. I'm going to read you some of your own lyrics here.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't long before the dawn, Danny's head began to swell. With his new wheels, he soon revealed all the whistles and the bells. He built the hype with a racing stripe and flames along the side until Tina Hart's Mustang was barely recognized. You must enjoy working these rhymes into your
I really
lyrics.
do. On my first real record in 2013, I had a song called Everybody in This Town.
Okay.
And I felt like it was like the first time I wrote a pretty good song. And it had kind of a play on words like that. And that was the first time I wasn't just writing a line, I was writing words that connected with each other. And when I wrote a line, it would connect with the next line, and then the next line, and then you could tie it all in at the end.
Yeah.
And when I did that for the first time, I was like, this isn't like great, but this is fun. This was fun. Playing with words is really fun.
Yeah.
And I still try to do it now in my songs. And so, yeah, that one was really fun to do.
Yeah.
And that one flowed pretty quick. Some of the other ones take a long time, but that's obviously the longest song on the record. But,
Yeah,
but
and
for some reason, it all just kind of came.
It's the
pretty
longest
quick.
song, and if I added up the rhymes, it's almost countless. It's really impressive.
My manager and I went back and forth. Obviously, it's probably not the smartest thing to put a song that has 10 verses and no choruses first. But I finally got my way.
I'll tell you though, the story, it's like you're driving the car, it moves pretty quick and you want to know what happens next. So I think it works really well.
That's good. Most people wouldn't allow that, but we're not most people.
I'll allow it.
All right.
Tina Hart and a Mustang. It was the talk of this town. People come to watch it run when the sun went down. To raise a glass as it passed and hoist up the crown. Yeah, Tina Hart's Mustang was the fastest car around. The loud and proud bucking crowd was a revving and making noise. It's just the way they do all them Tazewell County boys. They run their mouths north and south in front of the law. The back of Tina Hart's Mustang is all they ever saw.
I think it's a good time to bring up Todd Snider because we're talking about storytelling, right?
Sure.
Of course, Todd, amazing songwriter, musician, tragically passed away last year. One of the most gifted songwriters and storytellers around. He could tell an amazing story both within a song, that's one skill, but in between songs, he held those audiences in the palm of his hand with his long, drawn-out tales. It's remarkable. You were lucky enough, you already talked about it, you got to know him, you toured with him. He had very nice things to say about you and your music. What did you take away from your time with Todd? How do you think he influenced your music or what you do?
More than anybody, I feel like I learned more with him in like doing 5 days, doing a 5-day run than I would doing like 50 shows of my own. Little things, big things. The one thing I learned from him first was I used to always think you had to come out of the gate swinging.
At a show.
Coming out, first song, stomping your feet, hollering. That's how you get them.
Yeah.
And Todd would come out just barely strumming on his guitar, being way off the mic. You could barely hear him, and everybody in the theater would lean forward and to the edge of their seat and be like, what's he saying? What's he doing? And then he hit him with that one line that only he could deliver. And I was like, oh, you can get people's attention that way.
That's
you don't
great.
have to come out of the gate stomping your feet and screaming. And so I learned that from him, and I just kind of learned he had mad respect for the people who came before him, who kind of, laid the groundwork of this whole folk thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned me on to a lot of people too. And, I definitely have learned to tip my hat because, we all are influenced and inspired by so many different things. Just him bringing me on the road and kind of showing me how a folk show works and how to get an audience involved and how to flow a set and how to tell a story either before, during, or after a song. And just so many different ways how to approach things, but also just, making a life on the road, which at that time when I was touring with him, man, he was
Out
6-7 nights a week.
Yeah.
And then it'd be a day off and he'd go in another direction and do another 6 or 7 nights a week and different openers all the time. He was so generous with younger artists and giving them a chance. And he threw me a bone lots and lots of times.
That's great.
I was grateful.
And for our Chicago area listeners, you're going to be doing a show at Martyrs, right?
Yeah, 2 shows.
But one of them is going to be a night of Todd Snider songs. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so every year we do 2 nights at Martyrs, and every year it's the band and I. It's going to be our album release, but we're also tributing, like Todd on night 1 and John Prine on night 2.
Excellent.
So night 1, Levi Snider, Todd's nephew, is going to play a whole Todd set to open the show.
Okay.
And then on night 2, Aaron Kelly from Chicagoland is going to open the show with a full John Prine set.
I gotcha.
But then throughout the night, we'll bring those guys up for a Todd and Prine song too.
Great.
Yeah, those were definitely my 2 guys. So.
Excellent. All right, you already mentioned the song, but I want to bring it up again. Another great story song, $20 Bill, right? Touches on the home theme. And what I like about this one, we kind of got into it a little bit accidentally with Teen Heart's Mustang. You get us from the farm with your grandparents in the first part to the city streets for the dramatic second part very smoothly. And one of the difficulties of writing a story within a song is you only have so many words or lines to work with, unless you make it really long like Teen Heart's Mustang.
Yeah.
That isn't even that long. You still have to be clever about how you use those limited amount of words to take us through the story, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that really has 2 parts, but they become one, I suppose. And that's another thing from Todd is the bookends.
Yeah.
Tying the beginning into the ending. That's another amazing thing that I learned from him. That song is kind of an older song, and but when the first day we got into the studio, our guitar player couldn't make it, and so we were just kind of sitting there with nothing to do. And my grandfather had passed away just previous to that, and so I was like, well, we got to get sounds. Let's take this kind of older song of mine and put it and lay it down. And we did. And it's pretty much, my whole part was live and everything. As far as the writing, I was just kind of imagining my hometown and that time on that farm and grandma calling Grandpa and I in for lunch and sitting there at the table. And my grandfather lived in the same farmhouse his whole life, except for a little bit of time in the Army, a little bit of time at U of I, and in the nursing home. But my grandma's from Peoria, and it was kind of a hard town. It always has been. Yeah. She was kind of, the home of Richard Pryor, and she used to ride the bus, and so she was she had street smarts.
Right.
And so she used to give me a $5 bill and tell me to put it in my shoe for emergency purposes. And when I told her I wanted to be a musician, she started giving me a 10. And when I told her I was moving up here to Chicago, she'd give me a 20. She turned it into 20. So
that really happened.
So that really happened. And so the song.
We won't give away the end of the song because a lot of people listening aren't familiar with it. But
I was basically, when you're a folk singer, sometimes you get the early slot. And I was playing an early show. I think it was at the Heartland Cafe. And afterwards, I went and saw my friends, the Outlaw Family Band, I believe, at the Red Line Tap, who are now...
Which is right down from the Heartland.
Who are now my buddies, Hen House Prowlers.
Right.
Yeah, some of my really good buddies, some of my favorite bands. And then there was like an after party after that, So here my folk show was done at 7 o'clock, and I should have just went home, but I was out all night. And I got on the Red Line, and this guy on the train really wanted my guitar, but I really wanted it more. And
wow,
if I was sober, I might have just given it to him because he was pretty scary. But
he didn't get it.
I was a little had a little liquid courage. So long story short, I walked away with the guitar. But that was kind of where the second half of the song came from. And then, of course, like I said before, my roots and my grandparents still are with me no matter where I am. So.
I was down on a farm, just tilling around. It's just me and Grandpa waiting on a familiar sound. Come 11:30, we'd both hear Grandma's voice saying it's time to eat, you'd better bring it in, boys. Well, the food's out on the table and I was ready to take my place. She pulled me aside once while Grandpa was washing his face. you won't need this now, boy. Oh, but someday you will. She said, keep this in your shoe. It was a $20 bill. Oh, now, Grandma, they don't make them like you anymore.
We got a little more time. I want to talk about the mattress song. I love this song. But I think this song shows the care and effort you put into your songwriting. Here's how I see this. You came up with this simple and simply excellent chorus. There's a mattress on the side of the road. Somebody was holding on. Somebody let go. It's a great instant visual metaphor. And the way you sing it, it's like an instant earworm sing-along, right? Most songwriters would have been very happy with this. I know I would have congratulated myself for coming up with this, found some verses that matched up, nothing tricky, and let the chorus just carry the song. But you made it kind of hard on yourself. You decided to find verses that relied on rhymes with mattress, which is not easy for one thing, right? You got malpractice at the side of the road. You got an actress at the side of the road. Yeah. But the song in the process of that takes on some deeper meanings, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So you didn't take the easy way out here.
No, I don't think so.
Talk about how this one came together.
Sure. I mean, we do. Believe me, when we play it live, we do sing that chorus about 87
I'll
times.
bet. It's so fun. First time I played it here, my wife started singing along by the end of the song.
I had this vision so long ago of when I took this journey, like we were talking about, there was always, but are you going to have something to fall back on? Yeah. That was kind of where the song really came from. I mean, it came from seeing mattresses everywhere. But really, I had this thing in my head, you have those little things in the back of your mind for a someday song. And I always had this someday song about something to fall back on. Yeah. And I even was talking to a friend not that long ago, and his daughter's a dancer. And he's like, she's an amazing dancer, and she loves it. But I wish she would do something else in case she needs something to fall back on. Yeah. And I'm like, no, man, a dancer dances. And so that kind of was partially it. And, there's the thing that this life chose us, or we chose this life. Right. I don't know what it is for me, but in the back of my mind, like I said, even all the way back to that talent show, I learned pretty quick it wasn't going to be easy. But I got nothing to fall back on, and I think that's why I keep going and keep, spending the time writing these songs and still giving it an effort and still playing with these words to see how they'll fit,
I bet you didn't predict when you had that something to fall back on song in your mind, it would become this great raucous sing-along song.
No, I didn't. Yeah, and the crowd gets pretty good. Sometimes we break them up in three parts, which is really fun. And they go to town. Our guitar player beatboxes during that. Nice. Sometimes it's really fun. But,
well, there's some rap kind of lyric delivery in there too.
But the malpractice part has a little bit to do with, healthcare and medical insurance, and the actress part has to do with women often being overlooked or looked at for the wrong reasons for positions and roles and things in life. And then the last verse, the fall back on, just comes back to kind of me and my journey. Yeah.
There's a mattress by the side of the road. Somebody was holding on. Somebody let go. The road. Papa was a painter. He used to paint the town. Now he's sitting in the waiting room debating how the baby boomers laid him in the ground. Yeah, it's malpractice. It needs another code. It's malpractice by the side of the road. Somebody was holding on. Somebody let go. To the mattress by the side of the road.
There's a consistent characteristic in your writing, perhaps more so in the performance of your song. It's hard to put the words to it exactly, but it's something like honesty or sincerity, maybe passion. The way you deliver these songs has a passion to it. You always seem to be leaning in live performance, but also on this record. hearing you sing them, it's easy to believe these songs come from a place of truth within you. I don't know if I have a question here, but do you have anything to say about this?
Just for me to be truthful, I've always been really self-conscious about my voice, and I really have. I feel more confident about the writing than I do delivering it often, but just like I said before, this is what I do. It's the only thing I can do, and people have told me that my voice does sound real and honest. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but I also want it to sound good.
That would be nice.
And I think it does come through on this record. I feel like, a lot of times voices get weaker, but I feel like mine's gotten stronger.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, I'm kind of rearing back and trying to deliver these words and these stories better every time. And so that's my truth as far as my voice. As far as the songs, even if they're partially made up, they do come from a real place and a true place, or a real or true happening, at least. If it didn't happen to me, it happened to somebody else, or,
Well, it works for me.
Oh.
I want to talk about one more song,
Sure.
Pesh to Go. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Pesh to Go.
Yeah.
I would put myself in, I guess, the large group of Midwestern residents who had little or no knowledge of the Great Wisconsin Fire, which evidently happened on the same night as the Chicago Fire, but was much more devastating. So tell us where this song came from, why you decided to sing this one, write this one.
Yeah, when all the forest fires were happening out west recently, or, a couple of years ago, I started really thinking about that. And many years before that, I had known some people in Colorado who had lost their homes to fire. Some of them even musicians. And there was a venue in Chicago called the Tonic Room that I used to play at quite a bit, and it became the Golden Dagger. But it caught on fire.
Yeah.
And we did like a tribute, or not tribute, but like a benefit show for the Golden Dagger at Fitzgerald's, and I was hanging out with a bunch of musicians, and the talk of Chicago Fire started coming up, and these different fire themes kept coming out. And so I started researching it a little bit, and that's when I came across Pesh to Go. And it sounded familiar, and I realized in my travels I had driven by Pesh to Go many times to go up to the UP to play festivals and stuff. But yeah, I learned it was the same day as the Chicago Fire, and, the Chicago Fire publicity took all of its thunder. And I always say it'd be cliche if a guy named Chicago Farmer wrote a song about the Chicago Fire.
Yes.
So to mix it up and ease the tensions between Wisconsin, I wrote the song about the Pesh to Go Fire, and I kind of introduced it a little light-heartedly at the shows, but it was horrific, and it was really scary. I think the first thing I read was it was like a tornado of fire, and here in the Midwest, tornadoes are scary enough, but a tornado of fire, and
Thousands of people
in this like logging community. It just hadn't rained for so long, and it lit, and it just didn't stop. And people were jumping into the river themselves, their livestock they were putting in the river. People were jumping in wells, just doing anything to survive in that moment, and just a total desperation just to survive. And so I don't know. I sometimes I start with the words. Sometimes I start with a melody. I had this melody that was in B minor, and it felt kind of dark. Oh. And I was like, this melody is kind of dark and different and kind of angsty. And let's put this story to it. And it just all kind of came together that way.
Yeah, it definitely has that dark sense to it musically, but I want to get back to your vocal delivery. We just talked about there is real passion to the way you deliver these lyrics. You can almost sense the panic of the fire in the way you sing this song and the vocal delivery.
Yeah, we tried to do that with the vocal and the guitar, and these people felt and saw and heard this thing coming, and I think they had 3 to 4 minutes to decide what to do, and I had 3 or 4 minutes to sing it. So
yeah, there you go.
I tried to
bring the panic into the song.
I tried to put all that in there. And growing up in my small town, we didn't really, I grew up a grunge kid. I was into Nirvana.
Yep.
And we recorded in the same studio that Nirvana recorded their In Utero album. And
For this record?
Yeah. It was in Cannon Falls, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's called Pachyderm. And I knew that going in. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Pretty
so
cool.
I was like, you know what? If there's ever a song to get back to my grunge roots and really let go, then this might be the one. So yeah, it was fun to perform it. Yeah.
The wood set afire by the embers. A tree burns in the forest, there's a sound so loud you can't hear the timber. Warn you before it comes crashing down. Cry all night when you hear it. Shake it to the rhythm of your core. Shake 'em all loose in a desperate time. Shake 'em all loose in a desperate war. I'm on fire and I close my eyes. Standing in the field in the pain. My baby's o'er at the vegetable mill. Praying like hell for the rain. Praying like hell for the rain. I'm praying like hell for the rain.
All right, we're about out of time, but I do want to mention one topic: humor. You're a funny guy, Cody. Humor in your songs, your witty turns of phrase. I've seen you perform. You make people laugh as part of your whole stage presence. Talk about your use of humor in your songwriting and your approach to performance and how and why you weave that in.
Yeah. Some people say that maybe I'm a little too self-deprecating, and I think that's possible. But the other day, I was walking down the street, and I just fell down. Totally sober. I fell down. I looked back to see if I tripped on something. I didn't. My shoe wasn't untied. I wasn't drunk. There was no crack in the sidewalk. I just fell. And so I'm like, how can you not laugh at yourself? I just literally fell down at, in my mid 40s for no reason. I just fell over myself. And so, yeah, you got to laugh at yourself because, you're the person you live with and you know how ridiculous you can be sometimes. And I think people hopefully can connect with that. And I have a song called Umbrella where I want to write you a sad, sad song that makes you smile. And, even something as horrific as Pesh to Go, if I can, deliver a lighthearted introduction to it, I think it it's maybe an icebreaker, an introduction to an audience is kind of like, I don't just get to the guts of how horrific it is.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to, I think, introduce somebody. Usually introduce yourself to somebody, hopefully with a smile and a hello, not a middle finger and how awful things are. Mm-hmm. So I think humor has helped me, and I think also that's another thing about Snider too. He had this comedic spirit. Sure. I feel he would tell a lot of hallucinogenic stories, and he would drop some F-bombs from time to time. And one night we were playing at this show, and it was called the Kentucky Country Day School Theater, and it was a theater in a school, and there weren't kids there, but there were, alumni, and faculty and people, and he delivered more hallucinogenic stories and F-bombs that night than any other night. And I feel like most people would pull back in that situation.
He went for
it,
but
Todd or a Norm Macdonald would push as far as they could, and so I think there's this comedic, a folk singer and a comedian really aren't that different of people. Really, we're both, a folk singer gets to hide behind their guitar, but. And a comedian gets up there naked, but there's a lot of parallels there. My goal, when I first started, I think some of my songs were a little too silly. And what I wanted to do was to capture all the emotions that I could. And I definitely, humor was first, and probably, but, I wanted to be like Prine and Snider and take you on that emotional roller coaster where you eventually
the humor is probably the easiest.
It really is,
right?
Yeah.
Then it's harder to get into the other emotions.
But also in this day and age, if you can make somebody laugh, that's a pretty good thing to be able to do as well.
All right, I'm going to ask you one big picture question.
Yeah.
You've been at this a long time, since high school, basically. You can take this in any direction you like, but when you look back at your creative life, your journey, how do you think you have changed Was your process change? Are there things you think you've gotten better at or focused differently or things you're working on? Answer that any way you like.
Yeah, I think things have gotten way more interesting with the writing and the sound. My first songs were just like a train. They would leave the station, they would pick up a little speed, and they would slow down and go into the next station. That was it.
Yeah.
Just chug along. And then, but now,
hope you made it safely to the end.
Yeah. But now, well, not in Tina Hart, but in most of my songs, I have choruses. I have bridges. We have breaks.
Yeah.
We have different parts. We have tempo changes, and so I've really been constantly challenging myself to do that, to not do the usual, to kind of get out of the box a little bit. Mm-hmm. That might be cliche, and really for me, the biggest change was starting this band. Kind of putting the poetry in motion with these guys.
The field notes.
Yeah, I feel like I was kind of going through the motions a little bit when I was a folk singer, just because doing it so long.
And you could do it.
Yeah,
way.
and I would bring new songs to the table for my audience, but they were still kind of delivered the same way, even though I tried to make each song different. So I think I've taken some chances in the last 6 years, and it seems like, we'll see what everybody else thinks about it when they hear the record.
Well, you got my vote.
But for me personally, it was worth it, worth the risk.
That's great. Well, Cody, when this episode airs, we said earlier, the record Homeaid will be out in the world. Folks should go get it. But you're also going to be doing a lot of touring. Mm-hmm. People should be looking out for you in their towns. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We'll be in Chicago April 3rd and 4th. And then, I'm always bouncing around this area. I'm sure you have a lot of listeners in this area, but really we'll be all over the Midwest and probably out in Colorado in the summertime. Mostly, if you live in the Midwest, we're coming real close to you at some point.
Excellent. So. ChicagoFarmer.com, is that someplace where they can find you?
Indeed. Yeah, you can buy the record there and check out our tour schedule.
Excellent. Cody, thanks so much for coming up to the studio today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Had a great time. Thank you.
All right.
I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you what.